Okay. Sorry, Eileen.
Oh, that's okay, Gloria. Thank you. And I'll just reiterate that I didn't have much time to prepare for this because I took the first date that Anne had available because it was when I was available. So this is not a formal presentation. I'd like this to be more of a conversation. And I'd love to start by just asking, and particularly the new people, if you would tell me what made you join Suncoast Writers? And just a few words. I'm curious about that. Anybody?
I can say I'm a fairly new member. I just joined late last year, and I joined because I was looking for local collegiality in writing. I'm a poet as well as a visual artist, and since I moved to Florida in 2020, it has been Zoom meetings pretty much continuously. And I really was having trouble finding local people to converse with and, have dialogue about writing and art.
Well, thanks, Celeste. And collegiality, that's a really important word. Anybody else want to chime in on why they joined a writing group?
I'd be happy to. Thank you for being here, Eileen. I'm relatively new and I just needed some help with people reading my work and telling me this is good, this is not so good. Here's how you can change it to make it better. And I too, with the local part and the convenience of Zoom, because I am up in Sarasota and most people are from the Venice area, but it's convenient to be on Zoom. So peer feedback is important to me.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And I will caution you, don't take every bit of advice that you're given. And I think we learn to weed through that because some of it is not good advice. And you'll get to the point where you feel confident enough that you can say, oh no to that one and yes to that one. And that's what's so valuable about peer support. So does anybody else want to say why they joined a writers group before we move on?
I will. Jenny Gerard, a fellow naturalist and poet, invited me to join years ago.
Hi, Cheryl. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Eileen. You're looking good.
Thanks. It's the new computer, I think. So if I do something weird, and I probably can't even screen share because this new computer I'm not quite used to it. But so this whole idea of a writers group and thinking about what exactly is literary citizenship, and we're not talking about literacy citizenship, that little mistake that went out. I think we can all read pretty well, although the literacy rate in the United States I just read was something like 21%. So being a good literary citizen also could encompass some bit of that sharing literacy and helping with that god awful statistic. But I found a brief description of literary citizenship as a fancy term for forming professional networking relationships. And I will tell you that when I started writing and first publishing in journals, I had no idea what I was doing. I started sending pieces of writing. And it was after joining Suncoast Writers, where I did get some support in our writers' workshops. I got some feedback, some good, some bad, but all useful. And when I started submitting, I had no idea what these journals were. I hadn't read them, I hadn't heard of them. I got on Submittable and started doing it. And the one story I love to tell is and also got many, many rejections. And so there was a journal at the time that some of you might remember. It was called Glimmer Train, and it was run by two sisters. And this was a very, very prestigious literary journal I had never heard of. But when I'm looking for a home for my work, I see the name Glimmer Train, and I think, oh, that must be some funny little place where I can submit and they'll take anything. Well, of course, I got a rejection, and it turned out later that Glimmer Train was a hugely prestigious journal. And I think it was the month after my submission, they shut it down, and it had been around for years, for decades, I think. And I always said it was once they got my piece that the sisters said, we can't take this anymore, we're done. But and looking at how our writing evolves over time, and a lot of that is from the feedback that we get from our peers and from our colleagues and from our friends. So the idea of literary citizenship still had not sunk in. And then I start seeing, because I'm in a lot of online groups, women's groups, women's writing groups, and also more diverse ones. But there's a lot out there on what literary citizenship entails. And I started experiencing that from my colleagues. So I would, we all, no matter how much we say, I'm just writing for my family, I never want anyone to read my work, I think we're all fooling ourselves because, well, and I won't generalize that so much, but I think most of us would like our writing to be read. It's what we do it for. We want an audience, we want to share our work. And the whole idea of self-promotion, which Ed White and I used to laugh at each other all the time, about shameless self-promotion, becomes really daunting. And we all kind of hate it. I'll publish a story, and I want my friends to know that I published this story. I want people to read it. But I'm reluctant to keep saying, oh, look at me, I published a piece. And so I started having friends who took over this horrible, shameless self-promotion for me. And they would do that. They would say, my friend Eileen published in, you know, We'll Take Anything magazine last month, and here it is. So we start getting these groups of people. And when I look at Suncoast writers, I remember the website used to say, the website used to say it had a part of what we're here for, and it said, we support writers, and I don't remember the exact words, but I looked at the website before this Zoom, and it's not there anymore. And that kind of made me sad because I loved the idea that this is a group for supporting one another, not just for showing up, reading your piece, wanting to get, oh, I love it, and getting that pat on the back for it, which is what sometimes we tend to do. But it doesn't take a whole lot more effort to go a step further and be a literary citizen. So, for example, and I'm going to use Ed White for a lot of examples because Ed and I were friends and writing companions for quite a while before his death. And for those of you who are new, Ed White was a long time Suncoast Writers member who was a prolific writer. Ed wrote many books that he put on Amazon. He did them, they were self-published. He put them out on KDP. He was useless at any technology, so how he figured out that formatting and putting it on there, I'll never know. Maybe he had help. But his books were thrillers. I don't read thrillers. I mean, they're just not a genre that I'm interested in. But because Ed is my friend, and his books are 99 cents, so it's not a huge, outlay of cash that I didn't have. I'm going to buy Ed's books on Amazon and I'm going to read them. And I know I'm not going to like them because they're thrillers. Well, what a surprise. They were really good. Ed was a really good writer, and he could take a scene, he built up his characters. It wasn't a genre that I loved, but I found a lot to like in those books. And so, yeah, I did a short review on Amazon, took me 5 minutes. I recently looked back at some photographs that I took at one of our luncheons. It was a big luncheon. I can't remember what year it was. It looked like there were maybe 40 people in the group shot. I got to tell you, Ed's book had one or two reviews. One was mine, his many books, and they're not on there anymore, although a couple of his are. And that made me really sad because Ed was a contributing member to Suncoast Writers. And so this group, Ed's group, and I don't mean to come here and bash people, but I'm just being honest. It wouldn't have taken much to write a short review for Ed. And there are a number of other people, the same thing in the groups, but and I'll be done with that. So I'm not going to lecture people. I'm just going to say, what does it do for us as writers? What do you think? And I'd love somebody to chime in. What would it do for you as a colleague of a writer to request their book from the library or share the book, a picture of you holding the book on your social media page? Has anyone done that? And what did that feel like?
Well, I'll speak to it. Um, I have recommended to the library uh, to purchase members of the uh, Writers Guild books. And most of the time, I find that they're doing that.
Mhm.
So that makes me feel good. And I know that you reviewed one of my books, and that was really wonderful. I was so thrilled and to see that. But I have not reciprocated on others. Um, and so I find that I'm lacking in that. I'm not that technically oriented that can do it, but I should. And but I think, I've recommended Harry's books. I've gotten those from the library. I bought some of those. Lee's children's book. I said to buy. I put in my own books, and they have been accepted. So I think that's one way to do it, and it takes no time at all. Again, as you say, it's just thinking about it and making a conscious effort to
Right.
get it
I think
done.
so that example, and Anne, of course, you do a lot. You've stepped up to be president again. You've done a lot of promotion for other people. But one thing you said you haven't reciprocated, this cannot be transactional. It just doesn't work that way. So there's never a tit for tat in this thing. There's never a pro thing.
Right.
It has to be, and you don't have to love the book. And I would caution against everybody going in and doing 4-star reviews for books that they don't like, because what is that doing? That's saying to other people, oh, go buy this book. It's great, when quite frankly, it's not something you liked. But like you say, there are other ways. And some of the ways, I mean, there are so many. And I did want to do some screen sharing, but I'm afraid that I'll just like click off on this new little laptop of mine. So I won't. But some of the ways that we can promote other people's writing is, share it with a friend if you have the book. And I don't buy a lot of books because I go through my book budget, if I really had such a thing, probably by mid-January every year. So I request them from the library. And in Florida, I was really fortunate where I live to have 3 counties who would give me a library card. And if I couldn't get a book from one, I'd go to the other. Lee County, Charlotte County, Sarasota County would, I'd get that book from somebody. And but there are so many other ways. Just a mention to a friend, a picture on your social media, a review is good, but it doesn't have to cost a thing and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. So what we get back from that is tremendous, even though we're not doing it as a transactional thing. I reviewed your book now, why haven't you reviewed mine? No, that's not what it's about, and it can't be because you will have much disappointment and resentment, and that's not where this is about, because I don't look at writing as a competition, and I will, like any of us, when we started writing, and I have friends who've won wonderful awards for their books. And yeah, there's that little bit of, oh, I'm so jealous. We can't pretend we're not. But at the same time, it lifts me up. And when I can see that a friend has gotten an award and I can spread that all over the world, look what my friend did. I don't know if you can see behind me on my bookshelf. Whenever I'm doing a podcast or teaching a class or on just a Zoom where I'm just a member of the group, I have one shelf of my books, and you can see up here, I don't know if you can see, I have Anne's book. I have an anthology that a friend edited. I'm not in that. And I have a children's book that a friend wrote just recently. I alternate them, like depending on who's going to be there. And I have, so here, I don't know if you can see it, a former Suncoast Writers member, Ginger, wrote The Buzz on Lake George. I don't know if you can see it or not. This book costs more than I usually spend for a book, but she's a friend, so I bought the thing anyway. And it's great because I've been to her home, I've seen the Lake George, and I've enjoyed this book very much. Bob gave me a copy of the Florida Writers Association Thrills and Chills. Sometimes I'll have that up there. I don't read horror. It scares the bejesus out of me. I don't read Gloria's horror. Gloria is a wonderful author, but I can't read her stuff, but I will send her from time to time and that's another way we help one another, we promote one another. I'm always looking for opportunities to publish. And so if I see something, I haven't done it in a while, sorry, Gloria, but I haven't done it in a while, but if I'll see a contest that has to do with some horror thing, I'm immediately thinking, Gloria, let me send that to Gloria because she writes, I think, from what I've read of Gloria's that's not horror, I love it. I love the way she portrays the child's voice, but I can't read horror. Storm stories. I don't know if any of you are in this anthology, the Hurricane Ian storm stories.
Yeah, Pam is.
Pam is, I remember that, yeah. And so sometimes I'll put that up there, and I've like sort of put that out to friends who were impacted by that Milton. Here's a book you might be interested in. So what happens with that is even though it's not a transactional thing, because I do it for you doesn't mean you do it for me. There are all sorts of other benefits involved. I recently read a book by a North Carolina writer. I just came across this book somehow, and she's a debut memoirist. And I loved the book, and I wrote a review and got it published in Hippocampus magazine. That's been one of my dream publications for years. I've been to their conference twice. I like what they publish. I have a list of rejections as long as my arm from them. But now I'm a contributor because I wrote this thing. Um, so other ways, does anybody want to interject anything here? Anne,
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say I talked with Ginger recently, and she helped us do a new bookmark. But she was telling me that as a result of some of the promotion that people did for her book that you just showed us, she went national, that it was picked up by yachting magazines, by others, something she never expected. And so she's not only the people who live around Lake George, but their networking friends have bought the book and told other people. And so that's a perfect example of somebody's book that was regional, that was, just exploding. And, I think your book has done the same thing because even though it was a niche audience, that's a big niche in our society. And people just tell other people, and that's how this thing happens. Um, I was shocked myself that this year I got a statement from Amazon for tax reasons. I've never had that before because I sold over 50 books. I mean, I have no idea who bought these books because I gave away over 100. But, this is what happens when you're willing to put yourself out there. And I've gotten over the self-promotion because I just had something published and I told people about it. I don't, it's lovely that they say congratulations and everything, but I want them to know that sometimes random submissions, when you take a chance, can lead to something. And so that's why I do it. I don't do it for me because, I've already been published and that's great. But um, I think that in by promoting what you're doing, you're encouraging other people to say, I might take a chance on this. I can be a risk taker. And I think it's hard as a beginning writer or even experienced writer to do that. And so I think that's something we can share.
thank you. That brings me back to the thing that goes on with the high school and the elementary school here. And what a gift we give to those children who they write something and then to have an adult actually ask to read it, ask to have it read to them. It makes such an impression on them that, what I have to say is important. And it's our way of giving a gift to these children who want to write and have things to say. So again, no matter if the genre is something you're interested in, you can always, pretty much always find something redemptive about it, like Ed's thrillers, like horror stories that I'm afraid to read because they'll keep me up at night. And grief is another one. I mean, there are, like you say, it's a niche book. There are a lot of people who will back away from it and say, "Oh, who'd want to read about that? What a downer that would be." And your book on dementia, I have given that to several people here in my community, which is a 55 and older community, and many people are dealing with it, either with parents or spouses. And I put a copy in the library here, and I see it's never there. So yeah, I have another friend who published a book of poetry about autism. Her son was a non-verbally autistic child, and it's done tremendously well, even though, of course, it's a niche audience. I think you don't have to have someone in your life with dementia or has died by suicide to appreciate the writing. And so I get emails, not as frequently as I did at first, but I get a lot of emails from people who have lost someone to suicide and also who have not. And I think that that kind of writing for a niche audience is another example of literary citizenship and why we write. So I think overall, we need to care for one another in this. I don't know how many of you have heard me going on about my group, my critique group. It's called, we have a name. There are four women, four debut memoirs, and we are the Writer's Tears. We have supported one another, and we put in a proposal for a couple of writing conferences to talk about just how we shepherded one another through the whole process of writing and then finding a publisher and promoting our books. And so Writer's Tears actually is the name of an Irish whiskey. We all have a bottle. Mine is unopened because I don't drink whiskey, but I might be tempted at any moment. When we do a Zoom or we talk about a presentation, we all have our bottle of Writer's Tears with us. And all four of us now, the last one, my friend Casey is about to um, have her book launch in February. I will go to Albany for this book launch, even though I don't like the cold, because Casey helped me tremendously at the last minute when I had my advanced reader copies and found an error. She went through the whole thing, even though she had struggled with me chapter by chapter as we do on our Zoom calls. Um, and and those of you who know me know that I started writing late in life and I had to get a worn copy of Strunk and White to learn where the commas go. So I still have this comma trauma, although I'm much better at it and I can pick them out now and tell you where yours should go. But to have someone to do that for me, and when I told Casey I was doing this today, I said, I'm just going to talk about you because you are the literary citizen of the world. But she's not. There are many others, and there are many of you in this group. So I don't think I have anything else that I want to yammer about. I'd like to open it up to questions. Just a reminder to go to those workshops, go to the Venice Book Fair, even though you're not having a table there. Schmooze with the writers, pick up their books, look at it, say something nice about the cover. You don't have to buy the thing. God knows I couldn't. But think of these events as like you're giving a gift, and what will happen? You might meet someone that becomes a good friend, says, let's go to coffee. You two become writing companions and share each other's work. Okay, I've yammered enough.
Eileen,
Lee, hi Lee.
um, I would like to say that the person that helped me, who was the literary citizen that helped me, was Anne. When I joined the Suncoast Writers Guild, I'm a poet. That's all I write is poetry and lyrics. I write lyrics. But she said, try this, try that. you should submit this to that, and I ended up being published in the uh, RPLA collection contest, not the RPLA, well, once in the RPLA, but the collection contest 3 times. The one you showed, there's one of mine in there, and it's not horror. It's about stage fright, so it won't scare you. but she also recommended that I contact the Sarasota County Library, and that's how my book, was accepted. So, I can't thank her enough, for the things she's done to help me. And as I progress, hopefully I can do that for someone else.
Yeah, and I just thought Anne stepping up to be president again when she has a lot going on in her personal life. When I saw that, I was so thrilled to see that Suncoast Writers didn't fold. So,
Yes.
I mean,
Eileen,
yeah, hi, Tanya.
hello. Thank you for your presentation. A lot of good information. You have mentioned on a couple of occasions writers' conferences. What writers' conferences do you recommend?
Oh, several. The first one I went to, and Denise, I think I saw Denise there. Denise was there the last time I was there. I've been twice to Writers in Paradise in St. Pete. I think it's fabulous. I applied this year, but I was waitlisted and did not get in.
Right.
So I love that one. Hippocampus, if you know Hippocampus, it's called Hippocamp, but they are primarily for creative nonfiction, and they've been on hiatus for the past couple of years. They have a conference in Pennsylvania. Why can't I think of the name of the town? But it's a wonderful conference. Hopefully they'll be back next year. AWP, I've never been to, I've never had a desire to go to. I can't even think of what it stands for. But it's in LA this year. And my group, Writers Tears, put a proposal to them, which was not accepted. It's a huge conference, like huge, but it's going to be in Baltimore next year, which is my hometown. So I'm planning to go to that. There's a conference called Looking Glass Rock in Brevard, North Carolina. I have not been to that one. I was accepted a few years ago and then wound up not going. I applied this year. I'm on the wait list. If I get in, I'll be thrilled. There is a women's, maybe this is not just women. There's a Facebook group, which I have found invaluable. I know a lot of people don't do social media, but these Facebook groups for writers are tremendous. And there is one that's all about writers' conferences, and people will say where they've been and how much they liked it. There's one in Virginia. I cannot think of the name. I applied to it this year and I'm waiting to hear. I sound like I go to them all the time, but I don't. I've been to total in my life. But I would be happy to put together a list and send it to Pam. You're the secretary, right? Should I send it to Pam?
Celeste, right?
Oh,
Celeste.
Pam's not the secretary anymore.
No,
Pam?
she stepped down from that.
Okay, I could send a list of those things, those conferences.
Thank you.
Didn't you, or you're the one who went to Wild Acres, Tanya?
Yes, I do attend Wild Acres, and I'll be going back this year, and
For
it's a great conference.
for the retreat or for the conference?
Both. I go for the retreat, and I mean, if I'm going in the middle of the summer, it's great to take those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's so warm here. Yeah.
I had a cabin there last May, but I had the most remote cabin and not remote, but the word I'm looking for is escaping me. Rustic, the most rustic of the cabins.
Okay. I normally stay in the lodge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And yeah, the lodge. And what a beautiful place.
it truly is. Yes. Very, thank you, Eileen.
Welcome, Tanya.
Eileen,
Yes.
I just want to say what a pleasure and how much I got out of being in Suncoast Writers Guild with you. Eileen would come in at the last minute to the library and she'd have a scrap of paper and she said, I just thought of this on the way here. And she'd reel off something that most of us, would not have been able to do while driving. So please include a link to your website. If you have never read any of Eileen's work, she is a wonderful writer. She has a way of connecting things and touching your heart that you will appreciate. I also want to say you never know where your work will end up. I've written and published myself several chapbooks, and I gave one to one of my cousins years ago. And she told me about a year later she had given some of my poems to one of her neighbors who had lost her husband. And in the mail from this lady I never met, I got this, which was done on a like it's not a mushroom, but on birch trees, you see these sometimes.
Mhm. Vogue.
And you just never know who you're going to touch or where your work will end up. So don't be afraid to share it.
That's beautiful. I love that thing. So if I thank you so much for your kind words, and here I'm going to do a little shameless self-promotion.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Finally.
So I'm teaching a class on Story Circle for Story Circle Network in March, and the class is called Give Sorrow Words, and it's about writing your grief. It's a 4-week class. I don't know what they charge at this point. But Story Circle Network is and I'm sorry guys, but it's another women's writing thing. And they gave me an award, which I was thrilled with. And then they invited me to teach a class. So I'm going to do it. I feel like an imposter because I see this all the time that somebody gets something published and all of a sudden they're teaching a class. I don't have an MFA. I am a nurse. I have a degree in spiritual and pastoral care. I'm not particularly spiritual person, but that was an area of interest, and I loved getting that degree. So, but I do know grief, and I kind of know. So I have to convince myself that it's okay for me to do this because I've done it, and and I've done it with some success, and that just wants to bring me back to the point, what do we see as success? And I was on a podcast before my book came out, and the podcast host asked me, "What do you see as success in your book?" And I gave her a number of books that, I'd like to see this many books sold. I didn't quite make that. And so I look at it and I think, oh, I'm a failure. My book's a failure. And then I have friends whose books take off and sell a lot more, none of whom, well, actually, very few of whom are big five published and sell lots of books. Some are. Mine's not that. Mine will never be that. I never aspired to that. I never expected that. But when we look at, okay, everybody that you talk to in the world says, "Oh, I want to write a book someday." It's a thing. Like people say it all the time. How many of us really do it? So I I encourage people to look at that as a win. You may not be a bestseller. Anne's book about dementia is not going to hit the New York Times bestseller list. My book about suicide loss is never going to be a widely published, you know, translated into 50 different languages book. But we wrote a book, Anne. So let's celebrate that and celebrate for one another that because it's a big deal.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, first of all, hi, Eileen. Good to see you again.
Hi, Bill.
Thank you for speaking so eloquently about Ed. He was one of the most inspirational writers I've ever met, and still
He
enjoy his
was a
short stories.
curmudgeon.
And yeah, well, and also I wanted to thank you for pointing out the lack of having our, you know, reasons for founding Suncoast on the website. That's a bad miss on our part, and I think it's an easy fix. So we'll go back and put those on there. And Also, I'd like to just comment on your bookshelf idea. That's a great idea, just to put some books up there. You see it on these talk shows all the time on whatever station your network you're listening to. Some author's being interviewed, and he's got or she has books behind them that they're trying to market a little bit, and so that's a good idea. Also, I wanted to bring up the Facebook. If you send me information about your books, I'm happy to post it on the Suncoast website and the Facebook page. And then once that's done, it's an easy like, it's an easy share, and it's a way to get the word out amongst each other. Well, your audience, your friends and family, and that kind of thing. So that's something that Suncoast should take better advantage of. So. Uh,
Have you taken on the website and the Facebook page, Bill?
Temporarily, yeah.
Because I know somebody took it after I stopped, and I thought they were doing a good job.
That was James, and James has left the guild for now, I think.
Okay. We should put something about Ginger's book on there too. And I know, posthumously, I feel like I really have to promote Ed's work because, as I said, he was a curmudgeon. But I got to be friends with Ed, and he and Grace would come over and we'd play Scrabble, and he'd make up words, and we'd yell at him. But um, but he was a lot of fun, and
Well, that curmudgeon had a lot of success in his last few
yeah.
years there. Not only did he get a lot of short stories published in the last months of his life, but the fact that he was an 85-year-old writing young adult novels was that's inspirational to me.
Yeah.
That he can find an audience for that when he's doing what he's doing. So.
Well, that brings a point that I had to argue with Ed incessantly that his those detective novels were not young adult, they were middle grade. And he wouldn't believe me until he finally asked his editor, and he said, "Yeah, these are definitely middle grade, not young adult." Um, but Ed and I would go back and forth and argue and fight, and you know,
Well, I have to say, when I wrote Cancer to Caring, uh, Ed said to me, "What are you doing about editing?" And I said, "Well, I have Grammarly." He said, "Meet me at the library at 10 o'clock this day, and I'm helping you." So I go. He's got the premium Grammarly. He sits me down with his computer, and I spend an hour going through the book. And he's wandering around the library doing his thing, finding books to read. And I'll never forget that. I mean, it was out of the blue, but he was there. He knew I needed more than I knew I needed, and he did it. It was just wonderful. I just want to say also that uh, people who are living in communities, there may be an opportunity there for you to do a short presentation, have your book in their newsletter, and don't be afraid to get up and talk. I mean, I'm doing it. I've been doing it for quite a while. And uh, you never know who you're going to touch by what you say. And it's always something different with every person. But, you have to be kind of a risk taker to share what you have. And what else is there? I mean, giving away yourself is the best the best success, I think. Whether it's written, whether it's spoken, whether it's a handshake or kindness, uh, it's it's part of who we are, and it's the best part of who we are, and we need to remember that, I think. And you've done that so beautifully, Eileen, and so many of these other people have as well.
That's a really good point. And I have to say, when you write a book about grief or about a child's death, it's not an easy book to do any promotion because, my friends, I don't have it right here because I loaned it to somebody in my group, Writer's Tears. One woman wrote a book called Tap Dancing on Everest. It's a fabulous memoir, and it's an easy book to promote because you talk about, oh, this adventure story. It's an adventure story, it's a coming of age story, it's a story about Judaism, it's all this stuff that is easy enough to promote. When you're writing about a dead child, and grief, it's a whole different story to say, oh, let's have a party and celebrate my launch day. So I did none of that. And I could not bring myself to do it. I've done some library things with other authors here in North Carolina. Incidentally, North Carolina is nicknamed the writingest state. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here for writers in writing for their state publications and being library things. And I've done a few of the library things. One of the librarians chose my book as one of his picks for the month, and I did a talk there with another writer who writes fiction, but she wrote a book about as a fiction book, but I knew right away when I read it that there was a lot of autobiographical things in it. I could just tell that this was a woman who had first person experience with deep loss in the way that she wrote this fictional story. So, yeah, it's hard for me, but I did find there's a woman here who saw that I had written a book because I wrote, and this is another thing that you can do for self-promotion that is a lot easier than saying, oh, look at my book, is to write companion essays. So I started writing these companion essays and getting them published, but I wanted to get away from writing about grief and loss. And I wrote a story called At 70, Aren't We Too Old for a 55 and Older Community? And it was published in Next Avenue, which I highly recommend you all, if you have a story, like a life story, a personal essay. Next Avenue the editor is wonderful. I published there 3 or 4 times, and they pay well. But this story, At 70, Aren't We Too Old? Aren't We Too Young for a 55 and Older Community? When I got that, and they have a Facebook page, so I shared it on our community Facebook page. And so that was my way of saying to my community, look, I'm a writer, because at the bottom, it has a bio. And so one of my neighbors got my book, read it, gave it to 5 other people. And she said to me, because she saw my Writer's Tears thing on my Facebook page, my other friends, she said, I want to read all of those books. Well, instead of saying to her, well, go buy them, I said, I have them. I'll loan them to you. Well, she read each one. She loved Mimi's book so much that she messaged her on her on her website, and then she read Karen's and messaged her. So that was a way that like I was able to share my friends' books without forcing them on somebody and saying, "Here, read the damn thing. You'll like it." Uh, so it works. Have I taken up too much time? I ramble.
No. You're on mute, Anne. You're on mute.
We have till 12 o'clock. So Denise looks like she's ready to raise her hand.
Yes, yes, thanks. Hi, Eileen. It's good to see you, and congratulations on your book being published. It's really, really exciting. I just wanted to mention that I I've always had a deep sense of writers' community and what's our role in a writers' community as a writer. I came up as a writer using the Peter Elbow method, which I've talked about here. Of writers groups, which was helpful feedback, and all based on building a writers community. And I also was mentored by Don Murray when I was in grad school, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning columnist. And he was all about, you're part of this community. We work together. We help each other rise. And so that's been a big part of my ethos. So just recently, as an example of something you can do, I read this wonderful, scary nonfiction book, Midnight in Chernobyl, which is about the nuclear meltdown that happened in the 1980s. And Adam Higginbottom is the author, and it was one of the most incredible pieces of science writing I've read in a long time. And at the back of the book, there's all this information about his publisher and stuff. And here's how you can contact him for readings. And I just wrote to that email address, it was his agent, and I just said how much his book had meant to me and what an incredible piece of research and writing it was. And to my great surprise, 2 days later, I heard back from him thanking me for thanking him. And it was just like I wanted him to know that there was a reader out here who really understood the years of work that book had taken. So that's another way we can reach out and encourage each other.
Yeah, that means so much to people. Like when my friend here reached out to my friends and said, "Oh, I'm a friend of Eileen's and I read your book and I loved it." They were just so thrilled. I published a really little piece in the Sun magazine, only in the reader's right section. If I ever get a piece in the actual Sun magazine, I will forget all about my reluctance at self-promotion and I'll plaster it all over. But Reader's Right is a column that they do each month and they have a topic. And so I got a piece in Reader's Right and I got a letter from an inmate. And I saw the return address and it had this address that my husband knew right away was a prison. And the letter was very sweet and very complimentary and very like, my first impulse was, I'm going to write back to this prisoner because someone must have a program where they're teaching writing in prisons and they're using the Sun magazine. My husband said, "You don't want to do that." And I said, "Of course I do. Don't tell me what to do." Well, he mentioned that you could, because the prisoner's number was on the thing, you can look it up and see why they're there, why they're incarcerated. And I said, "Oh, it's probably a traffic ticket or, he smoked a joint when he was 20." Well, no, it was he was in for rape and murder and all sorts of things. He was a lifer. And I decided not to write back. And I've felt really weird about it ever since because his letter was reaching out to me, but I'm like creeped out by like, well, what if he gets paroled? So yeah, it's weird because there are so many, there's so, especially on social media, there's so many trolls and um, bizarre people. And I think you have to be careful. When I first published my book, I got a lot of messages from people um, that, I'm not a therapist and I don't have the time to engage at that level, nor would it be a good idea. I'm certainly not qualified to do that. And so, just a word or two of, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Hope you can find, peace or something. But yeah, I think for the most part, especially Denise, you mentioned a guy who's probably gotten lots and lots of fan mail. But to have them reach back out to you is really special.
I think Jack had his hand up.
I think that a group like this, I already can feel the friendship of support. The last two books I wrote, my publisher said to me, writing a book is a third of the process. Another third is getting it published, and the other one is promoting it. And since you're self-publishing, you're going to have to do the promoting. And I said, I don't want to do that. I just want to write again. And he said, for what? You got it on paper. So yeah, what you're saying is so true. You've got to spend the time and self-publish, and the best way to do that is with people within a group like this that become your marketing force. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Jack. And I will tell you that it's not just the self-published people who need to do their own promotion. Even the big five now does not promote, well, not that I'll ever know, but
Okay.
all of the indie publishers, university presses and things like that, they don't have a budget for book promotion. They don't pay anymore for you to do a cross-country book tour or, do a lot of promotion. That from what I hear from people, and my book is published by a small university press. They 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 put together a Zoom call with a publicist at one point to say, here's what a publicist can do for you and, contact her independently. The cost is prohibitive. And, it's the same with, there are a lot of pay to publish places out there. Some are better than others. Some are pretty awful. So there's a place, a website called Writer Beware that will give you, if they've had complaints, and there are some that will get you in by saying, we're very selective on who we take, who will publish. So, but send us your manuscript, and if you're really great, we will publish you. But then you send them your manuscript, and no matter how really great it is, they're going to say, oh, well, it needs this level of editing, and that's going to cost an extra $5,000 or whatever. So I was not in a position that I could pay anyone to publish my book, or in a position to pay for a publicist. So that's how this literary citizenship helped me, because I had made friends, and yeah, I had made deposits into the Bank of Goodwill for a while, not thinking, oh, this will come back when I have a book, because at that time I wasn't even thinking about a book. But those deposits in the Bank of Goodwill do come back to you at some point. People remember, like if I'm saying wonderful things about Nancy's book. And 6 months later, I have a book. Nancy might feel compelled to at least take a look at mine. And again, it can't be transactional because Nancy might have forgotten all about me, and I don't want to like have that resentment. But if you think that just getting a book out there, it's going to make its way into the world, it's not. I can't remember how many books are on Amazon, and Amazon's just one thing, but of course it's the unfortunately the gold standard. There are millions of books on there. And there are people who write really good books and put them on, Amazon to sell, and no one finds them because there's just so many. So that's what a group like this can help with.
Pam, you had your hand up.
Yes, Jack, since we're talking about promotion, I would like to know what books you have written, if you could show us.
The first book I wrote was Selected Memories of Vietnam, which is a historical rendition of my experience when Uncle Sam decided they needed me in the military. And the first time I published it, I had 3 author friends who, when I said, it's ready, publish it for me, they all, no, we can't do this. So I found a place in Massachusetts that would publish it. If I sent the final edition, they would make 50 copies of it for me, as long as I paid them up front, which I did. And then I went out to my friends and said, you said if I ever wrote this book, you'd buy it. And it was very expensive that way. Then I went to Author House, and that was in Bloomington. They did about 600 books a year. Now they do 600 books a month or more. And I got little or no support at all. In reference to that, at one point they said, give us this much money and we will have it in ARP magazine. Well, it was mentioned in such small fonts that you couldn't read it, but it was there. So after that, I decided I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to try to write. I was excited about doing that. And so I wrote a book called When 13 Became One, the build up to the American Revolution. And if you're not a history buff, you'll fall asleep on page 5. Because I developed very few characters. And so I joined my first writers group to learn how to develop characters and tell stories through them and their dialogue. Well, if you're going to add dialogue, now it's going to be no longer it's going to have to be a fiction book. And I've often thought of rewriting that as a fiction book because it is pretty good. 9 months ago, I was having a conversation with my brother about our grandmother who he kept saying, I don't remember her. I don't remember her. So I sat down, and 200 pages later, I had a book about my grandmother. And a number of people who have already picked it up. Why that was one of the best, I don't know. I'm in the process, and this month I will publish a book called The Wheel, and it's about the Underground Railroad. And that's probably my best work, because you always get better, I hope. And now I'm in the process of writing one about the War of 1812. So it seems that I have an area that I'm interested in, or whether I am or not, I'm not sure. What I really wanted to write is, I used to do some training and teaching and education, and I want to write a book called Time Management for College Students. And I'm bored, but it's a really good selling, and it's one of these things I keep hearing is if you try other areas, and you publish a book and somebody says, I really like that. I wonder if this person has written anything else. And I think that's sometimes what you just have to do. It's like fishing. If they don't like the fishing lure that you're using, you switch the bait. And all of a sudden, fish start coming in. So, yeah, I've been, it's nice. My wife always knows where I am because I'm sitting down in front of my computer and I'm not walking the streets or out doing other things with other people. So it's, so that's, I think that's, most of the, I published a couple of others, but they're incidental. They're just for a minor group of people.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'm really looking for the feedback. It's one of those things, why do you come to a group? And it's, Jack, stop describing the room by talking about it's 12 feet by 12 feet with 2 windows and 1 door. Do it through conversation. And I'm finding it difficult to learn how to do that. I've been a public speaker most of my life, no matter what I did, but platform speaking. But when it comes down to putting it in words on paper, that's where I really need the help. And so I hope that's what that's what I hope I'm getting. And I don't need another pat on the back. I got enough of those suckers. What I need is somebody to say, that really sucks. What you really need to do is change some words in here or introduce somebody else who says this. So yeah, I hope that's the strength that you have.
I think that's where you go to the Long Riders group and they'll help you a lot. This is a group of people that really gives really nice, soft critiques and gives you a leadership on things. So
great. Thank you.
Is Harry here?
No.
Okay. So I just want to, like Anne, you had mentioned Grammarly and Ed, and I was always telling Ed, get rid of the Grammarly. It makes more mistakes than you do. And maybe that advanced version is better. I don't know. So I have something on my new computer that will highlight things, and sometimes I agree with it and sometimes I don't. But I just caution people, don't take Grammarly for its word. Like I said, I wound up getting a copy of Strunk and White, and then I found another book at the Goodwill in Inglewood that was excellent as far as, does the period go inside the quotation mark or out? And, all these little things. But be discerning about who you listen to, because don't listen to me when it comes to, where the commas go, because half the time I'm guessing. I'm getting a lot better at it. But I just, like this children's book that's up here is fabulous, fabulous. It's written by the woman who's president of the Neuse River Writers, which is a little offshoot of North Carolina Writers Network. Fabulous book, great illustrations that her husband did. No, her brother did. And I have a copy of it. And the first thing I see, and this is a children's book, there are all these punctuation errors. And before I read it carefully, I happened to see a notice from Writer's Digest. They have a contest for self-published authors, and there's a children's book category. And I read the thing and I thought, this is delightful. I emailed her. I said, if the submission fee is not a hardship, I would really recommend it, because I have a friend who got an award from them in memoir, and it wasn't the big award, but it was an honorable mention, and it's still a big deal. So I said to her, I think, if it's not a hardship, the submission fee, you should send this book to them. And she said, oh, I'd love to. Would you take a look at it first? And I did. She came over for lunch. We looked at it. I read it, just a cursory read. And I said, absolutely. I love children's books. I've read lots of children's books. This one is fabulous. Then I sat down to read it later, and it is riddled with punctuation errors. So I didn't know what to do. It had been a couple days since I said, and she said, yes, I'm going to do this. And she can well afford it. So it's not like she would die if she spent the money. But I emailed her and I said, look, if you have until April 1st for this contest, hold off, let's talk. And she said, what? And I was so afraid to say, your book is riddled with punctuation errors. I don't want her to hate me. But I told her, I said, is there any way you can get a fresh copy of this? And we talked about it, and she's going to come over. I'm going to show her all the issues, and I'm going to say, don't take my word for it. We'll look it up. We'll make sure. And what's in it for me? I would love to see this book take off. She's giving all proceeds to Special Olympics. And a lot of people wouldn't notice. The children might not notice. The parents might notice. School teachers will notice, right? Hopefully. But the contest judges will definitely notice. And I didn't want her to waste the money on it. So sometimes we have to step out and take a risk by saying gently, are you sure that's what you mean? Are you sure that's what you want to say? Don't trust your cousin Ethel to be your editor, because Ethel don't know where the commas go. So back to Ed, I had a good friend who was a editor by profession for years. And Sally lived where I lived in Inglewood. She was brilliant. Anyway, she read my stuff. She did some edits, and I gave her Ed's book. And she said, and Ed knows I'm going to tell this, Ed. So she says, she says he took a bucket full of commas and threw them at the page. So every time Ed would give me something like that afterwards, but he said, but Grammarly told me to ditch Grammarly, because Ed was literally taking a bucket full of commas and throwing them at the page. And you may not think it matters. And Ed said, I don't care. It's not important. But when you're reading and it throws you off, then it's important. So anyway, I don't know, maybe Grammarly's gotten a lot better with all this AI crap. So
Who do you recommend if you don't use Grammarly?
I don't know. I mean, you can use Grammarly as you're writing. I don't know what I have in my new thing here. But if I misspell a word, it'll underline it. It'll tell me I can choose to fix it. It'll tell me if I should have put a comma there. I don't know what that is that's doing it. I guess it's word something or other. I don't know. But I know that Grammarly was not the standard that I'd want to publish under. And it may have gotten a lot better. We're talking about what, 5 years ago. But yeah, Grammarly was not up to speed as far as I'm concerned back then. Yeah, certainly I need help. I need something that says you spelled this word 3 different ways in this same page, but yeah, what is it? Does anybody know what's in Word that fixes it? It's built in there, something you don't even need it.
Pilot, there's a built-in editor, but I went to write something with Word the other day, and it said, "Oh, we have this great new thing, Copilot." And I
Oh,
immediately went
yeah.
online and figured out how to shut it off. Can you
Yeah.
talk about AI and
Yeah.
like reviews and things?
Oh, say that again.
Can you talk about AI?
I would never review a book that I had any idea that they had used artificial intelligence to write. I would just not even read it if I knew. And I think it's becoming harder and harder to detect. Um, it's just so weird. It's a frightening thing to me that, like we who've put, we've opened a vein to write something meaningful and struggled with it. And now you could go onto this thing. A friend showed it to me, Copilot. You can do this thing where you talk to it and say, take this paragraph and make it more scientific or make it more, and then it will do things to it. I don't know. To me, that's not, and I'm being judgmental and I'm being, I don't know. I just don't think it's writing. I think it's sort of fabricating writing. I'm certainly not a purist. I'll take the spelling corrections from whoever wants to give them to me.
Gloria, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I listened to a podcast about AI, and the guy suggested that you do your writing, right? Like write your book or whatever you do, and then go to AI. And at that point, it would just tell you that this sentence structure would be a bit better, like it's more clear, almost like an upgrade to Grammarly, but not to go to AI and have it write it. It's unbelievable what it will do. Like he could even like write a paragraph and then say, suggest the next paragraph, suggest the next sentence. You're right, it's absolutely frightening. But right now it's really bad. But it will improve more and more. And I don't know, how are we going to compete when they just pump out all these AI books, just to get them out there for marketing purposes?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be tougher and tougher.
For most of the places that I submit to these days, and there haven't been that many because I'm not writing a lot, but they in their guidelines, they will say, if we detect any, the slightest scent of NI, it's
You're
disqualified.
out.
Of
Yeah.
it's disqualified. And I'm happy for that, but I'm not so sure that it's that easily detectable anymore.
Yeah.
One thing I did hear someone say that worked really well with it, and I don't know which flavor of AI they were using, but they said they wanted to try a story that they had written in third person and they wanted to change it to first person. And they patched it right into an AI and said, make this first person. And it did it perfectly. And when I've done that, I always miss something. So it winds up really weird and I have to really struggle to look at it. So that might be something to consider it for.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions for Eileen?
No, just to say thank you so much, Eileen. That was a great presentation.
Thank
Great
Yeah, I'd like to say,
conversation around it. It was wonderful.
am I on?
And nice to see you again.
Oh, no.
all of you.
Yeah, thank you, Eileen. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jenny.
Oh, how are you? I've
Good.
missed you. And it's so good to see you.
Good to see you. Sugar is still alive, by the way. For those of you who don't know Sugar, she's my 18-year-old Labrador non-retriever mix. And she's still here.
Still kicking, eh?
We keep thinking she's ready to go across the Rainbow Bridge and she will rise like a phoenix. Of all of us. So Hugh and I are planning to come be snowbirds every once in a while, but we have to wait till the dog dies.
Well,
That sounds
Eileen,
like a title.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Eileen, thank you so much. And if you ever want to come to one of our meetings or join us again, we would love to have you. So just keep in touch. And we will be happy when you send Celeste that list and she'll distribute it to us, and we'll be thinking about you at our celebration tomorrow because you've been a big part of our group, and what you shared today was really important, and having other people get involved in this conversation, I think, was a great way to engage us in this. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Can you remind me what I told Celeste I would send?
You said you would send a list of conferences that you were recommending, and I have sent you a chat, through the chat. I've sent you my email.
Great. Let me take a look at that. Is it, so when we get off of here, the chat will be gone. So,
Did you find it?
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can send it to my email. Okay. All right, that should be good. Celeste, thank you. I'm gonna stick my email in out there in case I can't copy and paste this one. I don't want to do it right now. This new Mac is just it's still a puzzle to me. So I'm going to respond to the message that Lee sent out. So I think everybody's on that, and I'll put my email address on there. And
Perfect. Thank you.
hopefully I'll be able to find Celeste on there if I can't do this. Celeste, you are the secretary.
I'm the new secretary, yes. So I'm going to apologize in advance to everybody if there are mistakes in the meeting minutes, but Anne will correct them, I'm sure.
Well, I'm sure we will work together. Eileen, we have a great new team. Tanya is vice president, and Celeste is secretary, and of course Lee is our wonderful treasurer, and we're really working hard to keep this afloat and trying to engage our writers in person and on Zoom, and try to provide some great speakers like you. And I'm so happy that you were able to do this on such short notice, and it really means a lot. And this is a great audience, and I'm so happy that Jack and Brian and Elizabeth have joined us, and just
Elizabeth is in
observers,
Mecca.
or yeah. So we will look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you all for your literary citizenship.
Well,
Bye,
thank you.
everybody.
I'm going to close the meeting now, and thank you all again for joining us and being such great participants in this. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks again, Lee and Gloria, for all your work on setting this up. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.